My name is Scott Sodders. I'm the current chair of the Emergency Vehicle Management section of the IFC, and we're excited to have actually three total speakers here today, just to talk about where the evolution of electrical vehicles is going in our business. And we have some key speakers that can really tie into what very experienced and experts in what they do. But before we introduce them, I just want to get a little plug for the EVMS. You know, we're part of the we're a section that really our objective is to be a listening ear to those throughout the industry that have issues regarding emergency vehicles, whether it be engine problems, ordering problems, emission issues, anything like that. We don't have all the answers, but we do have an avenue, and hopefully we have support that we can kind of move in a direction that gets some of those things taken care of. And I think historically, maybe the information's not out there to recognize what we're all about as much as it should be, and that's something we're going to work on. Okay, we're going to get started. The next presentation. Gentleman's name is Michael Benson. Michael's a retired fire chief, consultant, leveraging an award-winning 30-year career in public service, including innovations which simultaneously improve service and lowered cost. His primary focus is electrification, switching away from fossil fuel-powered tools, equipment, and vehicles to electric, and developing the infrastructure necessary to support that transition. Electrification saves money, makes organizations more efficient, and improves resiliency. His analyses have identified more than $50 million in value for clients, primarily municipalities, through electrification. Please welcome Michael Benson.
It's 2016, and I'm thinking about retirement. And I'm sitting at my desk, and I had test drove a Tesla Model S. And I wanted to look at what I could do for a electric car, potentially for retirement, and that's when the Model 3 came out, and that's one that's not $100,000. That was supposed to be $35,000. Ended up being in the 50s. By the way, you can buy one today for about $40,000. The price has dropped significantly. But in 2016, I'm sitting at my desk, and I'm like, wow, the way that electric car is designed and built, that would be a really good police car, because we thought about how they use it, like Roger and Todd were talking about. It's really efficient. It works very well at idling and driving around slowly all day long, but when you want to go fast, right, you drop that foot and you have all the torque, and it's instantly quick. It's faster than anything else on the road. And I'm like, wow, that's going to be a really amazing emergency services vehicle for staff vehicles, police cars. I'm like, wait a second, how big is that battery pack? And the battery pack in my car is about 77 kilowatt hours, so around 80 kilowatt hours. And I looked at my house, because I was also looking at solar. I could run my house for 3 days on that battery pack. I'm like, that is a lot of energy. So then I started figuring out, well, if we have that much energy in that car and they only drive 100, 150 miles a day on a police car, well then that would run 2 full shifts for a police department. Wonder if that would work for an ambulance or a fire truck. And I started going down the path and just using first principles, basic physics. If you have a battery pack at the frame rails and there's 2 or 3 of them in an ambulance, or 4 or 5 of them on a fire truck, you lower the center of gravity and make the truck more efficient, cooler with the battery pack, with the water tank right on top of it, and essentially you make a better fire truck. And I think that's what Todd was trying to say, and Roger, is that these trucks are actually a better truck. But then I started to think, like we all do as a typical emergency manager or fire chief, what's going to go wrong? How do I charge that 24/7, 365, anytime, day or night, and not have to pay demand charges for the electricity, for example? Because what if it's a hot, sunny day at 2 p.m.? So I'm like, all right, what if we put a battery on the station that charges the battery in the truck? And then how do we charge that battery on the station? Well, let's trickle charge it to keep it healthy. So let's put solar panels on the roof. And that is called a microgrid. Then I went down a rabbit hole. And I realized that there's a whole world out there on the other side of the chicken-egg problem. The electric vehicle is your chicken, but you also got to have an egg. So the charging infrastructure is what we need to work on. And the 30-second elevator speech is, electric vehicles are coming whether you want them or not. You're going to want them. You're not going to be able to use them because you don't have an infrastructure that can charge 24/7, 365 without fail during a disaster after a hurricane has hit your county. So we need to put a battery on a building, solar on the roof. It's called a microgrid. That microgrid offsets your energy use on your infrastructure when it's not charging the truck. So it pays for itself. In the end of the day, it's free, because after it pays for itself, it doesn't cost you anything. It costs you up front, but it has a return on investment. Secondly, when you're driving an electric vehicle, there's less cost on maintenance. We don't have the numbers on fire trucks just because you don't have the volume, but the city of New York has had 10,000 electric vehicles in their fleet, and they are 60% less on maintenance. Now that's on trucks and cars, not on fire trucks. And then, so that saves taxpayer dollars two different ways. And when you're driving on sunshine and not on diesel or gas, you're saving money that way because you're not having to pay for that fuel at all. Because the microgrid pays for itself, means that energy is free. So that saves taxpayer dollars three different ways. I made it longer than a 30-second elevator speech, but that is basically the whole thing. That's all we got to go. So I'll talk to you guys later. I realized all that back in 2016, went down the rabbit hole, retired in 2018, and found out municipalities know how much about this? Nothing. My partner, also retired fire chief, got his PhD in public policy for microgrids, and that's when we figured out all this side of the coin of what we needed to know. So we need to look at your infrastructure as well as your electric vehicles. Now there was a little bit of reticence to believe the electric vehicles are coming, so I wanted to do a little bit of data. I extrapolate automotive industry across the board to what's happening to us. So I'm going to give you an example. I'm driving a Tesla. I've had my Tesla since 2018. How long you had yours? 19. So we've had ours for several years. Electric cars are here. This is sales of automotive vehicles, plug-in battery electric, anything that has a plug. Notice how many more the battery electric than plug-ins. But we are on an exponential growth rate. We're already there. Sales in June worldwide, 20% are all electric. 20% worldwide. In America, around 10 or 12%. By the way, just a few years ago, everybody said we'll never get to 10 to 12% until 2050. Every agency that does the predictions on how fast this change is going to occur has been extremely wrong. And they're all way off because we're growing exponentially. There's a whole different conversation about that. Look up Moore's Law, Wright's Law, you can learn all about it. But what I'm saying is, police cars are right there. Lots of people are putting electric police cars in. Where are electric fire trucks? Right there. We're just starting. But we already have all of this exponential growth in other parts of the industry. Over-the-road trucks are going electric. Buses, somebody mentioned their buses in their transit fleet are going electric. Their battery packs are 750 kilowatt hours. It's huge. Montgomery County, Maryland has a big, huge microgrid. Their buses are electric and drive on sunshine. They're already doing it. It's already happening. We need to do it for ourselves. So if you don't believe it, then you need to learn how Moore's Law and Wright's Law works and how things do change and do change very, very quickly. And I think I already talked about 1903 to 1923. Yeah. Really quick, Charging 101, they mentioned what we were talking about before, but a lot of people don't know. So if you're just going to plug into your wall at home, this is that level 1 AC power. You can use that for your just average drive. Some people drive a Tesla with an 80 kilowatt hour battery pack, and they only plug into that because they only use it for driving around town. Level 2, which is what I have in my garage, is going to give you what Roger was talking about, up to 19.2 kilowatts. That works great. I actually split mine between two EVs because my wife has a Chevy Bolt and I've got the Tesla Model 3. We also have a kid with a Chevrolet Volt that he plugs into the wall. This doesn't work for us, except for regularly daily use. So your staff vehicles, chase cars, ambulances, fire trucks, they're just going out and coming back, going out and coming back. And I think Roger alluded to this, and Todd might have mentioned it as well, that you can get that little bit of charge that you need and just kind of keep it charged all throughout the day to like an 80% stated charge where you want to be, that sweet spot to start a shift. But when you have problems, you need to have a fast charger. DC fast chargers for public is what they're talking about now. A lot of the Inflation Reduction Act, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, they're putting out a lot of DC fast chargers so that you can have an electric car and drive across the country. And I've already gone from Ohio all the way down to Savannah, Georgia. You went from Orlando to Atlanta with one charge. There are chargers everywhere if you have a Tesla, and we're about to be chargers everywhere if you don't. So like I said earlier, it is as bad as it's going to get today. It's just going to get better, better, and better. 2 to 3 times as many chargers, and you'll know where they are, and they'll work really well. and everything will be fine, because we had automotive fire apparatus in 1903, and we didn't have a gas station until 1913. So we are in this same mode of change. Well, you need a completely different DC fast charger, because yours has to be robust and resilient. It cannot fail, because your response cannot fail, like that meme I see on Facebook all the time. I'm sorry, ma'am, we can't respond to you because all of our electric fire trucks are charging right now. I had a mayor tell me, I can't get electric police cars, I'd have to buy 2 for every one, because one had to be charging while the other one were driving. Well, that's what we're going to solve, is that problem. So what is fast charging? Todd mentioned 50 kilowatts. You can get that with 210 amps on a 240 volt circuit, or 480 volts at 105 amps, and I think that's what you're looking at the stations. Todd's out the door. For 150 kilowatts more, what Roger's putting in for their stations, or I also recommend, I think Rosenbauer is also looking for 150 kilowatts. You're going to do a 300 amp, 480 volt service. That kind of a charger costs triple-digit thousands of dollars. That's six figures to put those kind of in. It's not cheap. And by the way, it is a cost, not an investment. There's no return on investment to that. That is a sunk cost for you. But they're charging now, Teslas and Porsches. Teslas are 250, Porsches are 350, the Hyundai Ioniq 5 is at 350. So a passenger vehicle charges at 350 kilowatts. But right now they're talking about a thing called megawatt charging, which we're going to get into in a minute. But that is the definition of megawatt charging. 1,250 volts at 3,000 amps, 3.75 megawatts. That's called megawatt charging in the MCS standard. So what I recommend from my perspective, and I'm not one of the fire truck guys, but what I recommend for public safety folks is to start off with an 80% state of charge. By the way, we're going to do a tiny bit of math today, but it's okay. 80% and 4. That's all you have to remember, 80% and 4. 327 kilowatt hour battery pack in a fire engine. If you want to be at 80%, you need 262 kilowatt hours, and you want to get that in 15 minutes, so you have to times it by 4. You need a megawatt charger. If you have police cars, 100 kilowatt hour battery packs, charging 80%. By the way, the Chevrolet Blazer just came out, has a 105 kilowatt hour battery pack. You want to do that in 15 minutes, you need a 320 kilowatt charger. However, there's not just usually one police car per shift, there's usually several. So they need on their station a megawatt charger. By the way, that's Logan, Ohio. Yes, electric cars in Ohio, believe it or not California. Lots in California. They're all over California. So now let's look at your station. If you have a pumper and a ladder, you need a charging that will be 1.4 megawatts, and you need a battery on the ground for your station of 1.2 megawatt hours. That will take care of you for disasters. That will last you for days. So if the hurricane comes through and takes out your electric grid, you'll have that available to you. If you had a bigger station with a staff vehicle, a couple ambulances, a pumper, and a ladder, by the way, this is my buddy in City of Green, this is City of Cleveland, Ohio. 1.4 megawatt charging. I wonder why that didn't change. A whole bunch of cars, still just for vehicles, just 1.4 megawatts. Anybody know why? Because power is how much energy we're giving you at a moment. Energy is the bucket of energy necessary to charge all of those vehicles. So you need a higher amount of energy, but you're still charging at a maximum 1.4 megawatts per truck, that kind of thing. So that's a huge amount of energy that you're not using except for 12 to 20 times a year. Because this is designed on when everything doesn't work, when everything fails, and I have back-to-back-to-back structure fires, which happens rarely, but it happens. So let's look at your response data over years and see when you hit peak demand for energy for your vehicles and design systems to cover that. And this is a completely different type of system than anybody else designs. And why do they design it differently? Or why do we have to design it differently? Because we are emergency services. We are mission critical. So every single day you're going to do your small charges. Every once in a while you need a little extra. We already have that today. We have series hybrids that work just fine. If you are able to afford that, it's an excellent choice to do. I think they've done an excellent job at designing the fire trucks. But when the power is out with an old utility infrastructure, now what do? So the example on the top right, storms take out the power. Has anybody actually paid attention how many times your power goes out or are we just that used to it? And the answer is the latter. We are so used to our power going out regularly that we can hear the click and the vroom of the generator going on. Oh, we're on generator power again. I wonder what happened. I don't know. It'll go off eventually and come back on. That's what we're dealing with. But we're dealing with it more and more and more. So Davis, you said you did not get microgrids. Fremont, California got mad at Pacific Gas and Electric turning off their circuits or browning out areas to avoid starting wildfires. So by doing that, they put on microgrids on their stations, 3 of them, so that they can operate without having to have the utility operating to protect themselves, to make them more resilient. But can you afford to put in all this kind of infrastructure yourself? Can you just do it? Well, you shouldn't have to, because the whole grid needs help. Who was from the Southeast that I talked to? There you are. All right, so he was talking about how they've improved their electrical infrastructure. So this is a report. You don't have to read this whole thing. I highlighted just certain words. There is an entity, a nonprofit, called the North American Energy Reliability Corporation. They literally analyze how reliable our energy systems are. And these are not necessarily based on disasters or the level of power that you're going to need with a future load. This is on regular operations, and sometimes it gets bad. That's what this is based on. So when they look at your North American energy systems, more than half the country is in trouble. If you're in red, you're in trouble with normal operations. If you're in orange, you are in trouble when things get a little bit bad. Texas ERCOT does a good job on their own. However, they are an island in that area. So if they have a problem, it's just their problem and there's nowhere else they can get help, which is how they had issues when their systems froze a few years ago. But if you'll look at all the rest of them, these are not a reliable place, northeast, central, and west. And I think, where are we at right now? Right there, right, Kansas City? So extreme weather scenarios need to be taken into consideration, and they don't, and they need to be, because they're going to get worse and more often. If you've noticed, that our storms are worse, they last for longer, and they happen more often than they used to. Again, you get used to power going out, you're getting used to these storms just keep on happening. Well, you don't want to get used to this because it's going to get worse. They also need to be concerned about what they call IBR performance and grid integration. That's renewables. Solar and wind being added to the grid, and they are not considering them enough. They also need more resources, and that's what you were talking about when you were telling me in Georgia how they've got online 2 more reactors at their nuclear power plant, and that is going to make a big difference, which is why you are not orange and red down in that location. They want to focus on what's called DERs. Those are distributed energy resources, and I'm going to show you how you are part of that and will be part of that. That mitigates risk, which we've already discussed. And then, of course, what is the impact from electric vehicles? More space heating, heat pumps, more inductive cooking instead of gas, that kind of stuff. So I showed you the example of using the batteries to your station with your DC fast charging. The one thing that people do now is they do not include the vehicle charging in their calculations when they design the systems. They're only designing the systems based on your facility load, which is why your next fire station, you need to ask them, are you designing this for future loads based on electric fire trucks? And then what are those loads and how do they calculate them? Because I can guarantee you that between me and one other person, we're the only ones who know how. Because nobody else is looking at this. And it's not that I'm some genius. I just used to be a fire chief. And as a fire chief, I looked at what's going to go wrong if I have a 327 kilowatt hour battery pack fire truck in my station. So the answer is, of course, what I mentioned before. Solar energy, wind, or water, or geothermal. Does anybody know what enhanced geothermal systems means? Does anybody remember fracking? Everybody remembers fracking. Did you know they learned how to drill sideways? Well, by drilling sideways, you can get to geothermal resources we've never been able to get to. We now have the technology and know-how from the fracking industry. Instead of using it to frack, we use it to do geothermal. So you can actually end up with a geothermal plant that when they're done is about this big on your property and pull energy from the earth. So you can get it from the sun, You can get it from the wind, you can get it from water that goes downhill, and you can get it from the earth. And then you don't have to get it from oil, gas, diesel, all that kind of stuff. Coal. Yep, I already cut ahead. Solar, wind, and water. There's already a study, by the way, that looked at what if we electrified everything, would we have enough power? And what's really hilarious, if we replaced corn grown for ethanol, not to feed people, just to create a bad fuel, ethanol, and replace that with solar, that's enough to run the country. If we put wind and solar just in the top part of Texas, there's so much good wind and solar down there, if we had the right transmission, we could run the whole country. We have plenty of power. We just need systems to capture them and put them in place. All depending on you. So, what is a microgrid? I'm not going to read the Department of Energy explanation or definition, but essentially what it comes down to is you generate your power, you store your power, and you use your power on your property. And it can operate all by itself. So Babcock Ranch down in Florida, they got hit by the hurricane like everybody else, never lost power. I wonder why. Oh, that's right, they have microgrids and solar. Island of Guam just a couple months ago got hit by a typhoon. All these articles about how Guam lost power and all these people are starving, they need food, they don't have air conditioning, all these problems. They never mentioned that the military base lost power. Oh, that's right, it has a microgrid. The military base didn't lose power. By the way, the military is already building the microgrids you need and you want. They're already building them today on bases all around the world. And of course, for us, we need to assume we're going to be charging electric vehicles. The most important part of this, and which is kind of funny, if you just did a battery, and Roger alluded to this, if you use afterlife batteries for storage and you charge them up at night when it's cheap and use them during the afternoon when it's expensive, then it offsets your cost. If you just did that and allowed it to operate your whole facility without anything else, you have a microgrid. But the controller is the key. Just like managing a battery is really important, how your battery management system works is important to the life of the battery system. Same thing for the microgrid. You need a good controller to make it operate. And what's crazy is that software, which means that software can just get better and better and better. I am multiple dozens of improvements to my car. My car stops shorter, goes faster, has more range than it has before, just through software upgrades. It's amazing what it can do. And that's coming to all the manufacturers. So what about your station? My daughter drew this, by the way. Your station still is the same station. The difference is these are now all electrical operated. There's no diesel exhaust. You got a battery on your station, solar panels on the roof. You're still connected to the grid because you're part of the grid, and I'm going to show you how you're an important part of the grid. And then there's a little thing over here, and then I should have the geothermal thing added, but that's a new technology. There's only one company doing it right now. But that says H2. Anybody know what that means? Somebody knows what H2 is. Hazmat, anyone? Hydrogen, thank you. If you have all of this excess energy at your station because it's designed for your momentary peak demand of 15 minutes 10 or 12 times a year, you have excess power. And if you have excess power, you can use water and an electrolyzer that today is expensive, but like Moore's Rights Law for solar and batteries is dropping the price significantly. Within 10 years, you will be able to have an electrolyzer at your station the size of half of an intermodal container, and you'll be able to electrolyze water, produce hydrogen, and use it for your trucks. You can use it for a range extender, you can use it for additional power, you can use it for storage of energy, lots of different reasons. And that's green hydrogen, which means you put water in, and after you use it, you get water out. No emissions. The hydrogen system that people want to do today is all blue hydrogen, which means more natural gas reformed into hydrogen two different ways with just as much, or not as much emissions, but still lots of emissions and be able to make that happen. Because we have all the emissions to go get natural gas. Does this exist? I already mentioned Fremont, California, Montgomery County, Maryland. There's an example of what it looks like when the grid goes out, but your station does not. Excuse me. But what about the whole community? And this is the part where people don't realize. Does anybody know what the Department of Energy's PR 100 initiative is? They want to redo the electrical system on Puerto Rico to make it 100% microgrids with clean energy, because it's an island. Why do we think we use the word islanding for how a microgrid works? Because that's where they started. Because you have a single electric line under the ocean out to this island, and when something goes bad, the whole island goes dark. There are little towns, little tiny towns in Puerto Rico where 12 or 14, I think it was 14 business owners got together and created a microgrid for the central part of their town. And now when the power goes out because of a hurricane, they have internet service with satellite access. They have refrigerators for people to keep their medicines cold. They have a way for grandma to get her oxygen generator to work. They made a whole resilient infrastructure for their little town, and the business owners did it because it's a return on investment with a microgrid, because it creates energy which has value, as compared to a charging system that costs you $100,000, that's a cost. But you're part of a bigger system. What if you had fire stations all over your community, and each one of them had a microgrid? And this one here has more load and less energy, but this one has more energy and less load, and you can share it all and connect it all together. That is how you connect distributed energy resources and improve the whole grid, one microgrid at a time, which you already need to have for your station anyway. By the way, this is also from the United States Department of Energy. It's their microgrid strategy, which we all should have. Note the date, what'd you say, 2030, 2035? 2035. So you remember that the reliability problem? What if we had microgrids all over the place? California's already on its way. They're already doing it. They're also putting in a charging infrastructure for over-the-road trucks up and down. Same thing through the central part, more transmissions connecting together. You need to be part of that solution for the whole country, because it's just going to get worse. It's going to get harder because there's more and more load coming. So just a quick overview. Now that you know you're part of this electrical grid change, not only the apparatus change, but the electric grid change, let's do a quick review, thanks to David Roberts from Volt's podcast. Highly recommend him. A little bit liberal on the politics side, but on the energy side, really smart, good stuff. So he wrote an article and explained how all this stuff works. So here's your transmission system. You got your plants, transmission lines, goes down to an interface like a large substation, and then now it's in your distribution system, and of course that goes down, and it's a one-way street. If something happens up here that goes bad, or something happens on the way that goes bad, it's out. That's why our electric grid fails all the time today. There's no back and forth. The one on the left is where we are right now. We're starting to add all these renewable energies and putting them back to the grid. This makes grid operators very unhappy for two reasons. One, they don't get paid by doing this. Two, you're putting stuff on their grid and it's going the wrong way. You're going the wrong way flow of traffic that they're used to. By the way, do you know why they don't get paid? The structure we designed to pay utilities to do their work was designed to grow out the grid, which means the more they grow it out, the more they get paid. We need to change the incentives to the utility. It's not the utility's fault that they operate the way they do. That's how they were designed. It's our fault. We need our utility commissions to change and operate. And sadly, in Ohio, I was there for the Power Forward Ohio Utility Commission hearings that explained exactly this is what we need to do. And after that, we had our corruption and all kinds of problems. $230 million of bribes. Wonderful, wonderful state. They're in jail. Anyway, so this is where we need to go and where we're going next, where we combine these things into microgrids that can operate on their own as needed and aggregate distributed energy resources. They need to be part of the system, because in the end, it should just all work and work in both ways. Essentially, the utility grid needs to become a network, almost like that Internet of Things, like an internet network. Well, the electricity needs to be part of that in your station and the police station and the hospital and the libraries and the schools and the service garages and the city halls and the rec centers should all have microgrids. Every one of those big box buildings that they're putting out by the highways, hoping that somebody will put a small manufacturer inside of it, or Google or Amazon or somebody will show up and use it. Every one of those should be covered in solar panels. And they all need chargers, because what arrives to that building and leaves from that building? trucks, and they're all going electric. So they all should have chargers, they should all have microgrids, and they all can be connected to fix this whole thing. And that's why your efforts will be part of it. So this is Moore County, North Carolina. What happened in Moore County, North Carolina last year? 2 substations got shot up by people with rifles and took out the county. So this whole county is dark, no power for days. Did you know they have fire stations in Moore County? What if every one of those was a microgrid? 22 stations, 50 megawatts of power based on the number of trucks. Not that I indexed it and analyzed it and put it all together and added it all up. 50 megawatts of power sitting there that could have run the county, and then nobody would have been out of power except for those directly affected by the outage. That's the power of the distributed energy resources. Plus, you need it to charge your fire trucks that are eventually going to be 100% electric, because the batteries are getting better. They are getting cheaper. They're getting lighter. They're getting smaller. It's going to be a lot better. This pays for itself. It is smart money. If you'll notice, you'll hear a lot of stories on CNBC or Wall Street Journal telling you how people are running away from fossil fuels and how that's a problem. Well, the reason they're running away is because this makes money. This is the investment from 2022, almost $1 billion, and I just saw an article 2 days ago, 1.7 trillion next year is going to be invested in clean energy. That green bar, what is it? Transportation. That's vehicles, electric vehicles. So this is a great example of everything you need for your microgrids in your communities. Alpha Structure is actually the folks who financed Montgomery County, Maryland's electric bus terminal that they didn't pay for. Montgomery County, Maryland, which has lots of money, didn't pay a dime and has more than a dozen microgrids. They got them all for free because the microgrids produce energy. So the investors paid to build them, sold the energy to Montgomery County, Maryland, who was buying energy anyway, but now they're buying it on a fixed contract, so they know how much it is. And once the investment comes back and they're paid off, they then get to have it for free, which means there's a return on investment that turns into them actually getting free energy after it's paid off. You can finance it yourself. You can finance it through a PPA. You can finance it through an energy as a service contract, bunch of different ways to do it. But the point is, you can get this built on your station without any cost to you if you finance it properly, because you're going to be buying electricity anyway. Let's buy electricity that comes off of your parking lot, off of your roof. Anybody know what France said if you have a parking lot with 80 spots or more? What France is actually regulated? You have to put solar on it. If you own a parking lot with 80 or more spots, you have to put solar on it because it's worth a lot of money. I found parking lots in downtown Akron worth $1 million a year. $1 million. Did they listen to me? Nope. I literally got laughed at, which is funny because I can run the numbers. I checked with my finance guy and asked him if he would be interested if this was available. He said he would be interested in just 2 of those 9 parking lots that he had people who would buy it. People don't believe this. They don't understand it. They don't think it's coming. It's really coming. They didn't think electric fire trucks. Roger said 10 years ago he didn't think it was possible. And now he knows it's the best fire truck you can buy. So all the components from the microgrid, you've got charging, you've got inductive charging, which we're not recommending for fire stations, but we are for police. Police cars come in and park at the station. They stop there regularly. They stop there for 5, 10, 15 minutes. They stop there for shift change, put inductive charging in the ground that charges their cars, and they'll never even know they're electric because it just charges. They don't have to plug it in. We can work that out for fire stations, but I don't know if it's the right application. We can plug it in. We're already plugging them now to a shoreline, to air, right? If you're already plugging it in now, you just plug it in with something bigger. Charging with canopy solar, storage, hydrogen generation, everything you need. That's an example. And you can get it through an energy as a service contract. When you put all this together in your communities, especially those who are looking for a climate action or an energy justice initiative or something like that, and most folks coming to these kind of presentations work for those kind of communities, That's where you then get all these benefits. When you put electric vehicles, charging, and microgrids together, you get all these benefits. And I don't want to go through them all, but we have them as a flyer. You can find them on our website. Questions? Or are we all ready to go to sleep? I went a little fast because we were getting toward the end of the day.
Can you comment on the practicality of your microgrids depending upon the area of the country, like Wisconsin, where we don't get sun all the time, versus Arizona?
Yeah. So what's interesting is it's two totally different microgrids, and it's different solar. This is something I learned recently that I also did not know. In the northern climates, you want your panels to be spaced with space between them, and I can't remember why. But in the southern climates, you want to line them all up nice and tight. One thing that solar panels like is to be cool, kind of like batteries do. So actually the sweet spot for solar in the US is right about above the middle, like the southern Ohio. Like that level is kind of the sweet spot. However, there are certain areas that are really, really good for solar. So that northern corner of Texas. Wind in Oklahoma. That wind never stops blowing in Oklahoma. It is like the ideal wind. We just need to put transmission to where it needs to go. So it really depends on where you're going as to what you're going to choose and what you're going to use. I did not know how good the geothermal was getting until I realized that now a company has got it, they've got it to the point where the company's profitable, which it wasn't possible, once again, not possible 5-10 years ago. And that's also interesting. This is new technology to us, but it's not new technology. This is well-proven technology, not commonly applied. You're using stuff that was developed years and years ago, like solar panels. We figured out how to use those and how well they work, how their efficiencies are better, and they actually last. The ones that were put in back when I was a kid in the 70s, they still work. They only work at like 70% capacity, but the ones you get today are even way better. By the way, microgrids have 25-year warranties. Solar panels have 25-year warranties that they will operate up to whatever percent over 25 years. Yeah. They degrade, but it's only a little bit, and they know what it is. And so that's why they'll warranty a guarantee it'll give you 90% or 85% of that energy throughout its lifetime. But even then, the price is still going down because we're just ramping up the volume, and in the U.S. Yes, yes. So what you just described, what he said was the technology and the cells and things like perovskite and other kinds of things that they're doing for solar panels, they're learning just like that Moore's Law and Wright's Law, and that's why they've been getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. It's one of the things they're trying to do for small modular nuclear reactors. They want to make it so it can be scalable and modular so it can also take advantage of the volume production, bringing down the price. The problem with that is nuclear stuff is not that easy. It's really hard. Yeah.
Build maybe 2 nuclear plants and use less resources than I want to use for a wind farm,
Yeah.
the solar panels that you want to put in.
All right, so his comment was you'll be able to get more power out of a nuclear plant in the same space as you would off of wind or solar, right? The problem is it takes 20 years and it costs 10 times as much.
Because why?
Just because you can't make it scalable, modular, and scalable. That's the problem.
The government doesn't want you building it.
Oh no, the government does. They're investing in it.
How come they're so slow to grow?
Because it's not as easy. That's what I'm saying. The nuclear technology is really, really hard. I mean, it literally takes a nuclear scientist to be able to make it work. Yeah. Whereas we can build lots of solar and wind. If I pulled up Lazard's, or you can look this up, Lazard's levelized cost of energy. This is no subsidies. LCOE, Lazard's levelized cost of energy. The cheapest power is wind and solar at utility scale. Anywhere else in the country, it's cheaper to put in new wind and solar than to keep a coal plant operating. The operating cost of coal is more expensive than new wind and solar.
But we see the burying of blades in Wyoming wild because these blades are only good for 10 years.
Yeah, so you're talking about all right, so this is, I'm going to answer the stuff he's talking about. This is referred to as FUD. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt has been injected into a lot of the media, what we're finding out. Early turbine blades that failed have been replaced, and they did not have an infrastructure to recycle them, for example, because they're really, really strong. So some people, unscrupulous people, just threw them away and buried them in the dirt, like you would think. They just threw them away. Well, there are companies now that recycle them. They actually reuse them for different purposes. They actually use them as sluices to run water through for irrigation. They're using them for a lot of different purposes, and it's just one of those things where somebody did something that they shouldn't have as far as just throwing them away, and other people have come up with a better way to use them. So you're going to hear a ton of things that tell you that this won't work, that solar's bad, wind is bad, water's bad, the chemicals you have to put in the batteries are bad. You'll hear all this kind of stuff. The fossil fuel industry makes profit, billions with a B, billions every single day. They can afford to pay people to write articles and put out news that make you say, well, I don't want to do a wind turbine because it's going to end up polluting my ground with a wind turbine. In Ohio, they tell people that the solar panels leach chemicals into your property. No, they don't. They drip water off of the panel when it rains. And they get a little dusty, which is why you have to clean them off. They don't do that at all, but the disinformation and misinformation is rampant, and they can afford to do this.
You gotta get Walmart or these big box stores on board, because then if they'll cover their parking lot with solar panels, they can sell that stuff back and they're gonna generate more profit.
So he said we need to get Walmart, big box stores on board. Walmart, Target, Google, Apple, all putting microgrids everywhere. Solar panels everywhere.
Parking lot, top of the roof, wind generators on every corner of the building.
Walmart's not doing the parking lot yet, just because they don't have a need for the load. But once they realize that they can be a really good truck stop and they can put a microgrid in to operate it, they'll do it. JP Morgan Chase, I'm from Ohio, so I'm using Ohio references. JP Morgan Chase covered their new building, or the building they bought, because they bought Bank One, in Columbus, Ohio. The roof is covered in solar panels. The parking lots are covered in solar panels. Do they do that because they want to be green, or because it makes green? The smart money is going here. If you invested in diesel, gas, natural gas production today, we already hit peak oil several years ago. We're not buying any more. It's going to go down. It's never going to go back up. What is going to go up is the need for more electricity. So this is the smart money. This is the smart place to go. Good questions, because people hear that all the time. Scott wanted to hear about mining or no? That comes out too. If we're going to have to get all these materials to make all these batteries, we're going to have to do all this mining. We need all these rare earths, and we can't get any rare earths. Well, one, rare earth is a term that was created when they had these certain things that they found, whatever these pieces parts were. They're not actually rare. They're actually available all over the place. Lithium. Do you know who created the whole idea of a lithium-ion battery and where it came from? U.S. We did. We gave the technology away so we could get it made cheaply in China. That's why it's all over in China. Did you know that, and there's cobalt coming out of the Congo, right? These kids are digging up cobalt. It's a horrible thing. Well, one, they don't buy the cobalt from those kind of mines in Congo anymore because the manufacturers realize this would be a black eye. Did you know there's a city in Canada named Cobalt, Canada? I wonder why their name is Cobalt, Canada. We have everything we need in our country for all the electric vehicles we want to make. We just need to be able to go get it and do it for ourselves. And if we're willing to blow up a mountain in West Virginia to get the coal out of it, we should be willing to put a wind turbine or solar panels on top of that. And by the way, West Virginia and Kentucky, two of the biggest growth for solar and wind in the United States. What's on top of the coal museum in Kentucky? Solar panels. Because it just makes sense. Because it's all about economics.
Is there anything next? What's the next thing? Is there anything that we're starting to understand or explore or even hypothesize that we think we know about beyond lithium-ion?
Oh, for batteries. Oh my gosh. Lithium-ion batteries, the kind we have today, the high nickel, high cobalt batteries, the ones that are in our Teslas, those are very limited use. We use them in the fire trucks because that's what's available for that level of power today. However, lithium iron phosphate batteries that do not have thermal runaway and cause fires, that can be charged to 100% and not degrade, are available and being used in lower cost EVs today. Iron oxide batteries are being built in Weirton, West Virginia for battery storage. You're literally using rust and iron to create and store energy. And then you've got things like sodium ion batteries where you can get rid of the lithium ion and replace it with sodium. Sodium, of course, is just salt. Does not have the problems that lithium ion has. That doesn't mean lithium ion and high power batteries are going to go away. It's just that the right battery chemistries will meet the right need that we need to have. So the battery chemistries, like I mentioned, the electric vehicles are new. We're just on the way up this hockey stick. Same thing for battery technology. We were on this path 120 years ago. We talked about, this is the 150th anniversary of the IAFC. So 150 years ago, everybody's driving horses. We just figured out how to use steam. And 130 years ago, we figured out how to use electricity and started to do stuff with that. And we just switched and did fossil fuels for over 100 years. And we have pretty much maxed out what we can get out of that technology. And we're starting all over with batteries. And you're just going to keep getting more and more and more and better. But dry cell and solid state were the two things everybody's been talking about, is how we can have a battery that's solid state, which way more power and way more able to discharge and charge quickly. That was always a concept. The production factories are being built right now, one of them in Colorado. And what I like about it is the Inflation Reduction Act, Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill, and the CHIPS Act brought all that manufacturing that we gave away to China back to the United States. So there are billions of dollars being invested in my state, which I said is the most corrupt state in the country. My state has got billions of dollars in EVs and batteries. By dollar volume, I know. Chicago, usually Illinois wins. I'm going by dollars. I'm going by dollars. When you got 130 million, yeah. Oh yeah. No, we've only had 2 to jail, but we still have more money. So I'm only going to use the money. There's Jersey. But no, if you want to hear what's really crazy, you actually can catch energy in space with solar panels and send it to the planet. They have the technology. It's not ready for prime time, but they proved it works. So don't even get,
Another thing that came out of Korea the other day, they've got a small cold fusion that they think they may have cracked something there where they can create it. I think it was cold fusion.
I've heard a lot. So the whole fusion thing, yeah. When you love nuclear, as soon as you start getting into nuclear, the cost and the scale is it's so really hard to do.
Yeah, but you look at how much concrete you have to pour to put a windmill up out in West Texas.
How much concrete do you have to pour to put a windmill up?
Well, that thing stands 200 feet in the air.
No, it's 1 acre. It's a 1 acre footprint.
Yeah, but how deep? How much cubic yards of concrete? If I put
I don't
one
know.
of those in, I can build a nuclear reactor.
No. No, we have to run the numbers. Concrete's way cheaper than building a nuclear reactor.
The waste of a 55-gallon drum per year probably in waste that I got to go bury.
Now, he just said the waste from a nuclear plant is 55-gallon drum. Now, he's accurate in this, completely accurate. Nuclear is the cleanest fuel, is the cleanest way to create energy. It's also one of the costliest. If we can do it with solar, water, wind, and geothermal at a way lower cost, and we know it can fit nicely into our planet and help our distributed energy resources to make our grid better, why don't we do that? And that's what I'm suggesting you should be part of with your station.
Plus, we had to protect a nuclear reactor at our fire department.
Yes.
We had a small nuclear reactor at Texas A&M University that we had to do a nuclear radiological class once a year. So they sold me on nuclear a long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a small generating. It's just a.
What's for the school, right? Yeah, it's pretty cool what it can do, but the cost is prohibitive. That would be nice, wouldn't it? It's a generator, but it would be a generator. So let's imagine it's 50 years from now, which by the way, by then they'll probably figure it out. You could have an intermodal container that is a nuclear power plant on your property, because they do have them on ships, they do have them on submarines, they do have nuclear power plants. It's just but it's extremely expensive, and it could be cost effective. Well, then that's what we're talking about. The stuff you're looking at is decades out. The stuff I'm talking about is right now. You can use it and get it right now, and economically.
Tomorrow starts right now.
It does, and they put a lot of money into it. There's billions of dollars going into that specifically. That was easy. Just shy of 4. Nothing else? Thank you all.